Why, hi there. I'm Ron Juckett, and I'm joined tonight by Ricky Keeler and Drew Douglas on the 200th episode of the DoDcast. Wow. How you doing, guys?
Doing good, Ron.
I'm doing well.
That's awesome. So tonight is our preview of the National League Divisional Series, and we want you in the chat to contribute as much as you'd like tonight, because the next 3 to 5 games are going to be, you know how this goes. Seth says, and welcome to the postseason. Let's start with the news that came out late tonight that Ricky covered on the site. Max Scherzer will hopefully pitch Game 3 and other roster news. So why don't you start off with that?
Yeah, it was kind of surprising that when you hear hamstring cramp a week ago and it's now turned into, Max Scherzer's not pitching till next week. You never want to see that. It kind of takes the Nats' strength of their rotation being better than the Cubs and kind of lessens it a little bit, because you feel confident with Steven Strasburg. And I know Gio's been pretty good at home this season, but you're not liking your chances with Gio against John Lester. So that makes Game 1 that much more important, and that Steven Strasburg has to have a great performance tomorrow night.
Now, they've also taken Brian Goodwin. He's going to be on the roster. Victor Robles is going to be on the roster. And Pedro Severino's terrible September will put Jose Lobaton on the roster. Is there any other surprises that you saw with that?
AJ Cole not making the team. I never thought I'd say it, but I actually thought that he would make the postseason roster, and we found out today that he and Adrian Sanchez were packing up their lockers, so it appears that they are not on the roster.
Now, I'm extremely surprised, considering the what they know about Scherzer, that Cole did not make the roster, because I would think if you needed someone, if you were going to go with the Johnny Holstaff game, which is what you never want for a playoff game, that you'd want to see what you could get out of that. Cole would be in a better position to do that than Edwin Jackson. I think that just kind of puts more pressure on the rest of the staff to do well, especially Strasburg and Gio in games 1 and 2.
Well, it tells you two things. It tells you either A, Edwin Jackson is the log man, which I don't think that's going to happen, or B, they're going to rely on Matt Albers and Sammy Scalise to throw multiple innings.
Now, Albers, you could probably get 5 or 6 outs out of a couple times. What about Solis?
I think you can with Scalise. I mean, he did it last year. I mean, there's a reason why Dusty let him throw every game last season. Now, it's not quite the same mismatch against lefties like the Dodgers have, but Scalise in September came through in some big situations, and I think Dusty's kind of refound that trust in him that he can go to him in the 5th, 6th inning to get some outs if needed.
Yeah, I think personally I'd feel more comfortable with Grace going multiple innings just because he's done it more this season. But, yeah, I think Scalise could definitely get the job done, especially with how he pitched throughout most of the second half.
The only problem with Grace is ever since that spot start against San Diego for Scherzer, he hasn't been really good. And it's sad because he was so good early in the season, but I think the workload just caught up to him.
Let's see. Seth says, welcome to the postseason. Yes, we're here. We're here. He asked if Chris Sale is the Kershaw of the American League. No, Kershaw's not human. Chris Sale obviously is. And I think Jose Altuve will be running over the back of his scalp for the rest of the postseason. I think Seth is joking, but it says Max for closer. I'm kind of concerned whether we even see Max at all in this series at this point.
Depends on how the series goes. Like, if you somehow win the first few games, and I was talking about this with Casey Stern a couple days ago, that if the Nats go up 2-0, you throw Tanner Roark in Game 3, try to sweep the series and save Scherzer for Game 1 of the NLCS, because it gives you more time to get him going. But as far as the closer thing, I wouldn't mind that in Game 5.
If you're gonna, in my view, if you're not gonna use Scherzer in 1 and 2, I don't want to see him in short rests in Game 5, because he's simply not healthy. He hasn't been for a while, whether it's been his neck or the legs or what have you. You know, I don't want to take that chance. I mean, obviously they feel concerned enough about it that they don't want to trot him out at home, they're going to use him at the friendly confines of Wrigley Field. I wouldn't want to, if they were going to use him in Game 2, sure, then he'd be able to do whatever in Game 5 on normal rest. But telling me that he's not going to pitch until Game 3 tells me that he probably shouldn't be used in Game 5. But we all know that the ultimate elimination game, it really is all hands on deck.
That's, I think, where you have to trust the pitcher. And I know that they maybe trusted the pitcher to a fault in the second half. You don't want to do that too much. But I think nobody's 100% in the postseason. So
right.
The fact that they're going to say, well, wait until Scherzer's 100%, he's never going to be 100%. He's just going to have to pitch the way he's been able to pitch. Remember, the guy threw with broken knuckles last year.
Right.
He was pretty good in the divisional round. The guy's – it's not like he hasn't thrown in relief in the postseason before. He's done it twice. He's been pretty good at both times in that role, including getting a bases load against the A's a couple of years ago. I just would love him in Game 5 just to bring that energy. I mean, you got to keep the energy in the crowd, and he's probably pumps up the crowd more than any pitcher out there, except maybe Sean Doolittle. But I think even if you just bring him in for 3 outs in an elimination game, I think you got to take that chance because really he'd be your best option besides Strasburg on regular rest or whatever the Nats decide to do in a Game 5.
Drew, you've actually pitched. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think we definitely see Scherzer at some point in this series with a start, and then even if he does start Game 3, I wouldn't be surprised to see him in Game 5. I was reading an article today about Kershaw in last year's Game 5 against the Nationals, and really everyone's just saying they couldn't hold him back. And I think it's going to kind of be the same situation with Scherzer where he just wants to pitch so badly, and even if he starts Game 3, I think if the bullpen is struggling a little bit, as we've seen them do in the past, and then in Game 5 you need Scherzer, I don't think anyone can really tell him he's not going to go in and pitch.
Yeah, no, I think you guys are right about that. I mean, the man would break down a brick wall if he had to. Mm-hmm. Seth says, wait, did Ejax make the postseason roster? Yes, he did. And Chris Lacey, who's the happiest man in New Jersey today, outside of Todd Frazier's family, no, that was a foul ball, asked, do you think the Nats will test Contreras early in the series? And could the Cubs do the same against Wieters? Oh, I think there'll be all sorts of running around. You'll see more running in this series than the Redskins will on any given Sunday.
That's the fun fact of the series is the Nats stole 13 bases against the Cubs in the regular season. 7 of them came from Trey Turner. Now 4 of them came from Miguel Montero. But there's a reason that both Brian Goodwin and Victor Robles are both on the roster. They're going to run. If they're down or run late, I'm expecting a lot of pinch running situations. Contreras has a much better arm. He's really one of those catchers that controls the running game. You can run on Lester. You definitely can run on Arrieta with that hamstring. The only guy I'd worry about is tomorrow night. Kyle Hendricks has 7 pickoffs this year. He's got a very deceptive move. That's probably the one guy maybe you can't run on as much, but that's where you have to trust Davey Lopes to tell those guys when to run.
Yeah, I think, like you said, Ricky, just the fact that they do have both Victor Robles and Brian Goodwin, you don't have to save Robles now to go out and potentially play center field because you have Goodwin. And so I think Robles is going to make a big impact on the series, even if just as a pinch runner.
Does he play left late in the games for Worth? That's
where I'd use him.
Yeah, I think either him or Goodwin goes in, or possibly even Kendrick. We've seen him play left a lot.
Because I was seeing somebody tweet this earlier. I forget who it was. The defensive outfield of Victor Robles, Michael Taylor, and Bryce Harper would be a really good defense late in the game.
Absolutely. And, I could, like with Robles, I can see a situation where Goodwin may never swing the bat in the series because his timing isn't going to be very good. I'm not sure what he did for his rehab, quote unquote, assignment, but how much that Worth, Turner, and Harper struggled coming off of long layoffs. I think that also, Goodwin being on the roster puts Robles in a position where you could actually see him actually swing at the plate.
He's not bad in terms of plate discipline. I mean, I haven't really seen a bad at-bat that he's had over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, he's also had big at-bats, too. Been up in big situations with the game on the line, and especially for a 20-year-old, he just really hasn't seemed phased, and I kind of expect the same throughout the postseason from him.
So if you're watching, just drop a note in the chat or give Ricky a tweet at Rickinator555, and we'll get your question on the air. You guys concerned? How concerned are you about Bryce Harper coming into this series? Start with Drew.
I'm not too concerned. I mean, he did have quite a few at bats coming back, and while he wasn't able to play a complete game, I think he worked really hard to come back. He did play most of games, and then they have had the workouts in the days since the regular season ended. And he ended the regular season pretty well. He had a couple hits in the final game, and it is Bryce Harper that we're talking about. So I'm not too concerned. I don't expect him to probably do what he would have done had he been healthy all year, but I think he's less than full-strength Bryce Harper is better than no Bryce Harper.
Absolutely. Ricky?
He's going to take his pitches. Plate discipline was a little bit of a problem middle of the week last week. I think it's starting to get a little bit better. He's not going to make Joe Madden and the Cubs sort of make him chase pitches out of the zone unless he's off to a bad start the first couple games. I don't expect Madden to pitch to Harper that much at all early on. If the lineup stays what it was regularly, I think they're going to put this series in the hands of Ryan Zimmerman and Anthony Rendon and have them beat them because Daniel Murphy's owned them the last couple of years in the regular season and the postseason. Harper is 10 for 30 against them this year despite 10 strikeouts. They're going to make Zimmerman have to beat him. They're going to make Rendon have to beat him.
And if anything, the last couple of weeks, Zimmerman was capable of beating teams. I mean, his triumphant moment of the year was beating the Dodgers on Sunday Night Baseball, and he, had a couple late-season home runs. He had a career-high 36. I would imagine, guys, that Harper will hit second in the lineup, which is something that I wouldn't have thought before. But just as Chris Lacey says, he needs to get the timing right, which will happen with more at-bats, and the way to do that is to bat second. Now, we saw an interesting thing happen in the end of the regular season. Trey Turner ran anyway with Harper on first, and they were double steals. Do you think that Dusty will continue to do that in the postseason?
I don't think so. I think he's going to go with the left, right, left. I think that makes the most sense because you don't want to have a situation in the later innings where the Cubs can just bring in their best left-handed reliever.
Right. Go
from there. I think you hit Bryce second, just get the at-bats. At this point, you're not playing in the postseason to get at-bats. You're putting your best optimal lineup out there. And your best optimal lineup is hitting Jason Ward second, letting him work up the count against a guy like Lester or Hendricks early in the game. He hasn't seen much of the Cub pitchers. Maybe that actually plays a factor. So I'd rather hit Harper third and give an opportunity to drive in runs rather than really do anything to curtail Trey Turner's running ability.
And Trey Turner has just come on like a storm the last couple of weeks. I mean, he really seems to be back to where he was at the end of last year. Right? Yeah. All right. So Go ahead.
No, I love the way Turner's playing. Like you said, I think his speed is a game changer. He's being a little bit more patient. I think the key this year, he was after a bad game one last year, he went 6 for 14 over the final 4 games of the series. If he can start off that way, the Nats really tomorrow have to go out there and get a 2-0 lead early. We're seeing in these playoffs, home teams are getting out to those fast starts, and that keeps the crowd into it outside of the AL wildcard game. But if you can put 2 or 3 up on the board, it's really tough to come back from in this postseason.
Right, and even the Yankees came back early in the wild card game, so the fans never really had the chance to be out of it. Mm-hmm. And the final today from Houston, the Astros 8, the Red Sox 2. No gloating. Seth asks if there's a trivia question. Not a lot of gloating. Seth asks a trivia question. No, we're done with the trivia questions for the year. Once we're done with shows, we all have stuff to write for the next day. And we want to make sure that we spend the time. Obviously, there's going to be lots to talk about after each and every game. And then we have to go write about that because the turnaround is so much tighter than it is during a regular season game. Chris Lacey asked, will Dusty use any Romero in pressure situations in this series? I don't think – I'll answer this one first, and you guys can agree or disagree. Not early on, but I think it depends on how much Alvarez is used. I don't think it's avoidable, but I think it's going to be something that they're going to try to avoid. We'll start with Ricky this time.
Do we really think Andy Romero is a lock for the postseason? It's not like he was used that much down the stretch.
That's true.
So, and even Romero in September, wasn't throwing his usual 100, 101. He was really using a lot of the off-speed pitches instead of the fastball. I mean, I think the guy you're looking at to maybe bring in sort of that is Albers or Solis. I mean, those are your two multi-inning guys, your two Andrew Miller type guys, because the Nats have the 7th inning set, they have the 8th inning set, and they have the 9th inning set. So as long as the starters go 6 innings, I don't think Dusty's going to have to mix and match like he did last year. He's going to go to what worked in the regular season, and they were undefeated when 2 of those guys pitched in any given game.
And Drew, you mentioned Grace earlier too.
Yeah, I think Grace, he'd be more of a long man than a high leverage left-hander, but like Ricky said, he's not really a long man, so I'm not sure that he does fit that role in the postseason. But yeah, I think Sammy Solis is going to get more high leverage innings as a left-hander before any Romero would, just because, just really from the All-Star break on, Solis was arguably their best reliever in the bullpen, even with the big 3 in the back end. And Solis, he led the entire pitching staff, the starters included, in most categories after the All-Star break. And so the way he finished the season, I think Dusty has a lot of confidence in him right now, and he's going to be the guy to go out there if you need high leverage inning from a left-hander, because you're obviously going to save Sean Doolittle.
Right. I think it's a case now. Look, if you can get 5 innings out of a starter, then you can go with Albers and Solis in the 6th, and then the law firm for the 7th, 8th, and 9th. Remember, because of the way they do best of 5 series now, there's an off. Not only is there an off day after game 2, there's also an off day after potential game 4. So there's never going to be 3 days in a row where you're going to need to get innings out of the back end of that pen. So, like I said, I think if you can get, especially out of Gio in game 2, if you can get 5 out of him with a lead, I think they're pretty much set. Doesn't mean it won't be tight, but if you get 6 out of Strasburg and 5 out of Gio, I think they're not going to have to tax the pen, and you wouldn't have to necessarily see someone like Eddie Romero in a high leverage situation.
And the wild card would be if there was a proverbial game 4 and Jake Arrieta had to pitch, because You're not sure how many pitches Arrieta can give you on that hamstring. His hamstring's probably worse than Scherzer's hamstring. Mm-hmm. So if you're using Arrieta, I think the key guy in Chicago would be Mark Montgomery. We got the last out last year in the World Series, and is it Mark or Mike? There's like 2 different. I think it's Mike Montgomery. Okay, mm-hmm. Mark Montgomery is like the former prospect. Mike Montgomery will come in and get a couple of key outs if needed. He can pitch in any situation. The one thing you love about the Cubs is they're versatile, both outfield wise. They can play any combination, and they can bring in any bullpen guy in any situation, whether it's Strop, Edwards, maybe Brian Dunsink, Justin Wilson, who struggled, but he's got postseason experience. So they have Madden is prepared for any situation. Baker has the pieces, but he doesn't have as many to play with as Madden does.
Right. Seth asks if Ricky, if you're keeping an eye on the Yankee game.
So far, not so good for Sonny Gray, but we'll see what happens.
What's the score? Because I shut it off because I kept looking up and watching the game while you guys were talking.
We got bases loaded, no out for Cleveland in the 2nd.
In the 2nd, so still no score. Chris asked whether Tanner Roark will start or relieve, and my guess is he starts game 4.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he's definitely the game 4 starter, assuming Max Scherzer pitches game 3.
That's true. I mean, if he pitches. Now, here's a question. If Scherzer can't make that game 3 start, would you go with Strasburg on short rest in game 4?
If Scherzer can or can't make that game 3 start?
If Scherzer cannot start game 3.
Okay, so Roark would be pitching game 3.
Game 3. So I meant, yeah. So would that force Dusty to go with Strasburg in game 4?
I think it would have to, because I don't really see who else they would turn to in that rotation.
There's no way in hell you would throw Edwin Jackson
if he makes it at all. I mean, we might not see. It's not a given Jackson's on the team. I mean, we've talked about, Drew and I, over the last month, the process of there might not even be a long man on this roster. I think Chelsea Jeans had it earlier that there might not be a long man. They might just go with 8 or 9 guys that can throw an inning, and that might not be a bad idea if you don't have that obvious guy. I think you should have full trust in Tanner Roark. He's pitched better in the second half. He had one bad week, had a bad game in Philly, and then a bad relief inning, which that last game I don't really count. I mean, they'll throw that one out. He's going to pitch in his home state. He's gotten over the pressure of maybe pitching in the World Baseball Classic in last year's postseason. He pitched well against Chicago a couple months ago against Kyle Hendricks. He pitched 6 strong innings in that game. There's no reason not to trust Roark. He's a different pitcher in the second half than he was in the first half. And I think he can easily go out there and keep you in the game, which is all I think you need against a guy like Quintana, who's been dominant. Or if it's against a banged-up Arrieta, you're facing basically Chicago's rest of the bullpen if Arrieta gives you anything at all.
Yeah, Seth asked if Tanner could be the long bit. No, Tanner's starting a game. Whether it's game 3, which we hope is Scherzer start, or game 4. He's definitely starting a game. They don't really have any other options. And if A.J. Cole didn't – see, that's where they kind of – I kind of have to shake my head at A.J. Cole not making the roster. It's not that I would want him to make a start, but if you needed to do him to go 3 innings from the get-go, I would trust him over Ejax.
Yeah, I think they should have taken Cole, but I guess I'd be happy with if they gave it to a guy like Matt Grace and he makes the roster, or Eddie Romero even.
Cole showed a lot of good stuff in the bullpen in September. Was throwing the fastball 95, had a lot more break on the slider, was looking confident. Maybe he just didn't do enough. But that last game, filling in for Scherzer, he looked probably the best he's looked all year.
Chris asks if game 1 goes extra innings. Poor Ricky, if that's the case. Who pitches multiple innings for the Nats? And I'll let Rick, since Ricky's the one that's with you tomorrow night on Twitter, I'll let him answer the question first.
I'm going to say it's probably Solis. Maybe Albers. I think it's those 2 guys. I mean, if it's tied late, you throw Madsen multiple innings. You could do that. You're probably not likely to see Doolittle multiple innings. Kinsler hasn't really done it that much either. So it's really just about those 2 guys. If this game went extras, it favors Chicago because I think they have better options in the extra innings, and they can throw Davis for multiple outs in a tie game if they have to.
Drew?
Yeah, I think it's definitely Solis or Albers or Grace if he makes the roster, but that's not really a given at this point.
I think if it goes extra innings and you needed someone that could get you 6 outs, I think you would use whoever you didn't use in the 5th or 6th inning. So if you burned Solis and it's Albers or the other way around, I don't think you'd use a starter to do that.
I never thought I'd use Matt Albers and big postseason outs in the same sentence.
Seth asks, do all three y'all feel good going into game 1? That's Seth's word, not mine. And I can't pretend to be a Southerner. And it's critical. Is it critical that the Nats win game 1? Well, you don't want to go back to Wrigley tied. And so, I think for Strasburg's confidence, it is critical that he at least leads with a lead. Leads with a lead. There. It's a difficult language, man. It's a good thing I don't write for a living. But no, I think Gio has had a better year than people think he's had. And so, if they get out of town with a split, I don't think it's the end of the world. But if they're down 0-2, I would really be worried.
I'd sign up for a split right now. Considering the Scherzer news, and you have Scherzer in the back pocket in game 3, I think 1-1 you have the edge because remember that would make Jake Arrieta have to pitch.
Right.
And that's still the wild card and everything is we know Max Scherzer can pitch a little bit on that hamstring. We don't know if Jake Arrieta can do anything on that hamstring after he got scratched his last start of the season because of it. He was supposed to pitch the last day and got scratched. Right. But I think the pitching matchups, first 2 games, Strasburg and Hendricks is pretty even. And I would even make the case with Gio's home starts and John Lester a month removed from injury that even that's even. Because Lester hasn't exactly been his dominant self since coming back. I think if you come out of here 1-1, I think you got the edge with the home game potentially in game 5 and a banged up Arrieta in game 4.
Yep, and don't forget there's a lot of mileage on Lester's arm because of all the postseason work the last few years too. Drew, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I don't think game 1 is critical, but I think I do feel pretty confident going into it just with the way Strasburg has pitched. Obviously, the Nationals haven't hit Hendricks real well over the last couple of years, but just with the way Strasburg's been going, I think he's pretty much the best in the league. And like Ricky said, if you leave DC tied 1-1, you have Scherzer in Game 3 against Quintana. I'll take Scherzer there. And then you're going to have Roark against Arrieta, who struggled. And everyone's been talking about how Tanner Roark struggled towards the end of the year. And I don't care about the rough outing against the Dominican and WBC. I don't care about the rough first half. He was their Game 2 starter last year against the Dodgers and beat Rich Hill in Game 2 of the NLDS last year. And with the way he pitched in the second half and the way he pitched for pretty much all of last season, I'll take Tanner Roark over Jake Arrieta.
Don't dismiss Quintana either. I know Scherzer has the edge, but Quintana could have no-hit Team USA in the World Baseball Classic if not for the pitch count rules. So he's pitched in these kind of games. But Casey Stern told me this week, and he said it last night to the guys on the TBS postgame show. The Nats, people around the Nats think this is the best Steven Strasburg has looked ever. He looks more confident. He looks more composed. He speaks differently, as you saw today, how he's learned to sort of, if his body tells him he can't pitch, he won't pitch. This is probably the best he's going to look, and that's really a good sign going into this kind of game. The only problem you have, you don't want him to get, if he can get through these first 2-3 innings, because he's going to be overamped. This is his first playoff game in 3 years, and he wanted to pitch last year and couldn't. He's got to be able to get through early because he's going to have more of the nerves than the guy on the other side who pitched in Game 7 of the World Series last year.
Yeah, when Buster and Oli and I talked before the last game against the Mets, the Sunday nighter, we talked a little bit about the fist bump for Strasburg on the double play, and he talked about the day that they clinched that he was the second person on the dugout to greet the fans, which is something you never would have seen from Strasburg before. Strasburg really wants this, really, really wants this. All right, let me catch up with the chat a little bit. Judo says, something just seems so weird about the Max Scherzer debacle. Well, it really is a debacle at this point. You're right. I get that they don't want to say that they're worse than they thought, but there's something I'm not totally understanding about it. He continues, if Max starts Game 3, I actually think it's not bad for us. To 1, break up the righties, and 2, I was joking on Twitter, but I kind of trust Strauss at this very moment more than in Game 1. And Max is my favorite player, so I don't. This is Judo talking, so I don't say that lightly. I would agree with it. I think they might have lucked into having their best starter right now pitch Game 1.
I think so too. Max Scherzer hasn't looked good. It might be a combination of the injuries. He's not been horrible, but he's not been his usual self. He also doesn't have the best postseason track record. He's pitched well as a reliever, but the starters, he did okay last year. But he had the 6 pretty good innings in Game 5. Kind of got ruined by the Justin Turner 15-pitch at bat last year. It could have been a lot better. Mm-hmm. But they did get the right guy, I think, in this stage. It's only the question would be Game 2. I think people be more confident, despite Gio's good home numbers, with a Max Scherzer, John Lester Game 2.
Yeah, in the postseason, it's all about like who's playing better right now. And obviously Scherzer is the better pitcher, but right now, Steven Strasburg is better than Max Scherzer. And so I think it's definitely good to have Strasburg going Game 1. And like Judo said, I'm a little bit concerned about the whole Scherzer situation because Nationals are still listing it as just a cramp, but he did get an MRI. You don't typically get an MRI for cramps. And Nationals haven't been really honest about injuries this season, kind of continuing the trend of dishonesty in Washington. So I guess I am a little concerned, but I think it is Max Scherzer. He'll find a way to go out there and pitch, even if his leg ends up falling off after the game.
Seth brings up, what if the Nats are tricking the mainstream media and that Max actually is healthy? No, if that was the case, then Max would be pitching Game 2. And in a clinching situation in Game 5, he'd be going on normal rest because the dual off days. So there really is something. If you go back and look at that pitch, that was his last pitch of the night. He landed wrong on there. That's not a cramp. Steven Strasburg cramps. He cramps all the time. He's getting massages and Gatorade IVs in the middle of the game for crying out loud.
Is it going to be cool tomorrow at least so he doesn't cramp again?
You know what? I haven't looked.
Let's check the weather. But I'll add on while you check the weather. Seth, to your point, and I was on after the game Saturday night, and I thought that too. But the minute you heard MRI, I didn't believe it, but Scherzer would have thrown a bullpen session if he was okay. I think he's as good to okay as you're going to get for this stage of the season. You're not going to get him 100%. It's not realistic. Nobody's 100% this time of year. But I think they're just going to do everything they can to try to backtrack him. And if they have to use him, they'll use him. If they don't have to, and they make it to the NLCS, you have a more rested Max Scherzer for that kind of game. But they're being careful, and I think they're doing the right thing. You don't want Scherzer to re-aggravate that injury and then miss the rest of the postseason.
Don't forget, there's the couple balls he's taken off the leg earlier in the season, the balky neck because he slept wrong, and I've done that before. That hurts it hurts. I'm in public. I can't say how much that hurts. It hurts a lot. Chris asks, is there a player for the Cubs who could be a game changer for them in the series? And I'm going to give a very pat answer. Anyone who's on the 25-man roster can change a series for any team at any time.
I'm going to go with Wilson Contreras for his ability to throw out runners behind the plate. And also, out of the 9 home runs the Cubs hit against the Nats this year, 5 of them were from Contreras. Now, a couple were against Eric Fetty. One was against Matt Grace, but he did have a homer against Gio and a homer against Strasburg. He was a 24-25 home run guy in the regular season. He loves the bat flip, so he can easily spark the Cubs with one of his monster home runs. He hits in the middle of the order behind Rizzo, Bryant. So I think when those top of the guys play a factor, I think Contreras' home run power behind the plate could be a huge difference here.
Drew?
Yeah, I listed Arrieta and Rizzo in the X Factors piece, but I also think Javi Baez could make a big impact just because he's always up there just swinging out of his shoes and swinging for a home run. And while he could go up there in a big situation and hit that home run that he's swinging for, he could also go up and just swing right through 3 pitches or swing it. He really swings at anything. He's a 3 true outcome hitter, meaning he strikes out, walks, or hits a homer. And so if he's up there in a big situation trying to do too much, I'd really rather have someone who's just going to go up and just try to put the ball in play over Javi Baez. So I think he can make a big impact either way.
I watch what Lester does in game 2. If he goes out and shuts down the powerful Nats offense at home, brings the series back to Wrigley at 1-1, I think this thing that gives the Cubs a ton of confidence going forward, going home for 2 games. And he gets shelled, then you got to like your chances the rest of the way. Not saying that Lester is the key to the series for the Cubs, but if you want one specific player, would be the one that I would watch.
And he's going to go 100, 110 pitches if needed. There's not going to be a lot of starters in the series that will do that. We saw it in Wrigley in August. I think Lester had 114 pitches in that game. I wouldn't be surprised if he did that again.
Judo said, and I agree. I agree with that. Judo says, part of me thinks the Nats have either coddled Max too much this season or have not let on to something more serious throughout the season. I don't think they've coddled him. Here's a guy that sat there and yelled at the University of Love manager that I wanted to bleep and get this one more out. Max, as you know, would run through a flaming wall. But I do think the second half of the year that something has not been right with him. I'm not sure what it is, but he's not been the same pitcher as he was the first half. You don't think
ever since the cramp in Miami, really, not the cramp, but the neck injury, he's been not the same guy.
Drew?
Yeah, I think Max is just one of those guys who he's going to go out there every 5th day as long as he's able, and I think he has been pitching through stuff. I don't think they've called him by any means. So I think, yeah, he's definitely been pitching through various injuries or just ailments. I think maybe his neck is still bothering him at least a little bit. That hamstring is obviously there, and last year he's pitching, like Ron said, with the broken knuckles, and no one knew anything. So there's obviously other stuff that maybe we don't even know about.
See, Seth asks, if they're up 2-0 going to Chicago, who would I pitch in a potential clincher? Why don't you go? You're not going to go with Strasburg on 2 days rest. So it would be if Scherzer or Roark, depending on how healthy Scherzer is. Judo says Scherzer had that bad game against Arizona, then the injury started popping up, and he didn't look the same ever since. It's as if he was fighting an injury or if he was under condition. I don't think Scherzer's under condition. I think that, once this season is over, we're going to find out some injuries. That's what happens. We don't talk about him this time of year, and we're going to say, oh, yeah, he pitched with a bulging disc in his neck all year. Oh, well, that explains an awful lot then, just like last year with the broken finger. Judo says the one consolation is that none of Max's injuries have been in his arm that we know about, Judo. Think of it that way, that we know about. I really do think the light load the second half has worked against Max, though. I don't think he's had that light of a load.
The light load has really been caused by all the games he's been scratched.
Right. When he's in there, I mean, he's the one, Judo, that insisted the game against, what was it, Atlanta, that he insisted on throwing 110, 125 pitches.
And then the Milwaukee game pitching, I think, 2 more innings after taking the line drive off the.
Right. When I think of coddled superstar, Max Scherzer does not come to mind. I know that's not what you're hinting at, but no, I think he is probably given, there's never been a game where he hasn't given 120%. Even during the games we probably should have backed off a little bit.
And you hate to say it, but he's a $200 million man. He's going to take the ball. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. The same way Steven Strasburg's going to take the ball because he makes close to $180 million.
Chris asks, so Lester has had a subpar season. Do you have to respect his pedigree in the postseason? Oh, hell yeah. I mean, there's a reason why the Red Sox were incredibly moronic and stupid in getting rid of him. And every place he's went, he has been a bulldog, and he is the perfect pitcher for the Cubs. He takes that mold on right there. I'm going to do whatever it is I have to do. Now, we get to the point where bodies start to age and all that, and that might be working against him. This is their 3rd consecutive postseason, and there's just a lot of miles on an arm, Chris. But if you know that if he only has to get 5 innings to shut down the Nats and the bullpen can go the rest of the way, you respect that. Absolutely. I don't think either of the two of you are going to disagree with that, right?
This is Lester's 5th straight postseason, dating back to 2013. He's 9-7 with a 2.63 ERA, and he won 3 of the 6 games he pitched last year. Where he came out of the bullpen in Game 7 with an ERA over 2. So he's still vintage John Lester. I mean, I know it too well. Ron knows it too well. He's still a guy you fear when he takes the mound, regardless of whether his stuff has dropped off a bit or not. He's got the gamer mentality that you want in a top-of-the-line playoff starter.
And so if you go back to 13, the Red Sox won the World Series in 2013. The Cubs won the World Series last year. They made the NLCS the year before. So he has pitched deep into seasons. And it wasn't his fault that Oakland choked away the wild card game against Kansas City a few years ago either. So no, you don't bet against John Lester. No, Bryce Harper is not going to pitch. Judo says, I'm surprised they didn't say that Adam Eaton had a leg cramp. Well, I think the cameras kind of told you that story. So yeah, Ricky, you did the tail of the tape. When you sat and broke both of these teams down, what took you by surprise?
Well, I think there's an even edge at first base. If you take away Zimmerman's bad numbers against the Cubs, he's pretty much had, you could say, a better year than Anthony Rizzo, which is a little bit of a surprise. I think Rendon and Bryant are pretty much a push.
You have fans in Chicago who don't like that, but
Cubs fans don't like that I think that, but the Cubs fans also to remember it's what you've done this year, not the fact that Bryant's a Rookie of the Year and an MVP winner. Their WARs are pretty identical. So they're pretty much the same player. I think Rendon has the better peripheral numbers and is better defensively than Bryant. The way I like this series is the Cubs outfields. I mean, they're going to probably throw John Jay out there for a game. They'll throw Kyle Schwarber out there for a game in left field. And while Schwarber's defense isn't good, he had the most home runs in the second half of any Cubs hitter. Wrigley Field this year is like a 360 hitter. So he'll be in the lineup in both those games in 3 and 4. Ian Happ had 20 home runs as a rookie. There's so many options the Cubs can throw at you in the outfield. It's not even funny. And their defense with Baez and Russell up the middle, it's going to be really tough to get base hits.
Drew, you did the X Factors piece. What caught you by surprise as you prepped for this series?
Just seeing Rizzo, how he struggled towards the end of the year. In the last month, he only hit 230, including going 1 for 14 in his last 5 games. And then it's been over 2.5 weeks since he last did a home run. So I think he's a big part of their offense, but he's really tailed off at the wrong time of the season.
Yeah, you don't want to be going into this time of the year cold, which is my concern about Harper. I did 5 reasons why they'll win and 5 reasons why they won't win. What surprised me was when the Nats win. I screwed up the calculated math on this, Ricky, but it's still pretty impressive. When the Nats win, they score over 6.5 runs a game. So in 97 games this year, they average 6.58 runs a game. That's insane. But when they lose, it's under 2.5. So it really is feast or famine. If they don't get runs on the board early, I don't think that they're, I think they're going to be in some trouble. What was the other thing that kind of caught me by surprise? That was pretty much it. So the next question I have goes into Judo's comment here, and I'll start with a comment, then I'll turn it into a question. Have to say hats off to Justin Verlander today. Only pitcher to throw a quality start so far this postseason, and the only one to look good. Kate Upton's man still's got it. Yes, I think that he does. So going with the wild card games and what we've seen so far, and I don't have the TV on, so I don't know how Sweet Pickles is doing against Bauer.
1-0 right now in that one, by the way.
Are you surprised at how poorly the starting pitchers have gone, and how much pressure will that put on? Is that going to be the case as these divisional series get going?
I think in the wild card games you had a guy in Severino who never pitched in a playoff game before and couldn't handle the being too amped up early. And last night you had John Gray who couldn't handle being too amped up early for Colorado. It's a matter of who pitches the guys with experience. But even Greinke was bad last night after a 6-run lead, which is kind of a surprise. I think it's just the way the offense has ruled the day this year. Maybe that carries the same weight in the postseason. So maybe it just comes down to this year who scores the most runs, and maybe offense is more prevalent. We don't have as many 3-2 games as we did in the past.
I'm not going to really disagree with that. And that kind of scares me if the Nats are built to get 5-6 innings out of their starters. If we're seeing the bullpen warming up in the 3rd inning, I don't think that's a good sign. Do you, Drew?
No, absolutely not. The Nationals are really a team built around strong pitching, and so the Nats had the top 3 pitchers, or the top 3 starting pitchers in terms of WAR in the National League, and Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg, and Gio Gonzalez. So yeah, they're really a team built around pitching, and I've been watching these wildcard games. I know all 4 of the wildcard starters combined to throw fewer innings than Madison Bumgarner did in the wildcard game last year, which is pretty amazing to me. But I think the Nationals pitching staff is one of the best in the league, and I think they will still continue to pitch well.
Let's hope so. Because let's hope so. Judo says Trey Turner and Anthony Rendon are starting to get some deserved attention this week. I think Michael Taylor could be a dark horse factor. There's a guy that really hasn't played a lot in the postseason. This is going to be very new to him under a big stage. I'll start with Drew on this one. What do you expect out of Taylor this year in the playoffs?
I think he could have a good series because he's been really clutch in the past. A game that kind of sticks out in my mind was a couple years ago. He had a big home run in Arizona. I think it was a grand slam towards the end to give him the lead. And he's just been pretty clutch in the past. And he has the right tools to be a productive player in the postseason. Where he's great defensively center field. He's got great speed, so he can make something happen with his legs, and he's got a lot of pop. So I could see him being kind of overmatched by just the stage and all the spotlights in the postseason, but I can definitely see him having a good series.
Ricky, I'll expand it to you. Maybe you can get some of the other ones that don't have a lot of playoff experience. What are you expecting to see from Taylor and maybe like a Robles and all that?
Well, Robles, you just want him to play his game. I mean, it's really what it comes down to. When you get into the postseason, you got to treat it like it's a regular season game once the first pitch goes. And for Michael Taylor, I'm just looking to see good at bats at the bottom of the order and make some great plays defensively. That's really where his value is going to be. He's the best defender on this team. You make a case for Rendon, so if you say Rendon, he's the second best defender on this team. But when he's hitting the ball well, he provides a lot of depth. And I think that's a huge plus that they have. I think the depth that they have with Adam Lynn, who's in his first postseason, you can put him in the game late at any point, and you trust that he's going to get a big hit for this team. I'm going to throw one other X factor at you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's been hated this year, and he's underperformed. The best Nationals hitter against the Cubs this year, outside of Murphy, has arguably been Matt Wieters. He had the big grand slam 2 months ago in Wrigley Field. He gets big hits with men in scoring position. Most of his RBIs came in those spots this year. He's going to probably feel like it's a new season for him. He's going to hit 8th in the order. Maybe Madden treats him a little bit differently at the bottom of the lineup, but Matt Wieters also has playoff experience. So I think he can come up with a big hit when the bright lights aren't really on him, as opposed to past years with the Orioles.
The pitchers love throwing to him. And I think that right there is just a major help. I mean, one of the things last year in the playoffs, even though Lobaton and Severino did a good job, was they lost Wilson Ramos to that ACL injury at the end of the year. And now the pitchers love throwing to Wieters, and I think that helps everyone come this week. Chris asks, do you think that Dusty will play small ball in the series to take an early lead? I think they're kind of heading in that direction. They certainly know how to bunt and know how to take extra bases. I think anything, if they think they can do it, guys, to throw the Cubs off balance, I think they will. Drew?
Yeah, I'm not sure about small ball, but I think if Trey Turner gets on, he's definitely going to be running. And if Trey Turner leads off with a single, and let's say you have Jason Worth in the 2-hole, if you can see a lot of pitches and eventually just get a ground ball to the right side, then all of a sudden you have Trey Turner on third with just 1 out. So I think they'll definitely try to manufacture some runs with their speed, with whether it's Turner or Taylor, Goodwin or Robles. You have a lot of guys with above average speed who can go out and steal a base, and one of the best first base coaches in Davey Lopes.
And you can look at the last 2 weeks of the season, though. The Nats had issues scoring men from third with 1 out, or getting the runners over in a scoring position. That's going to be something they have to correct in this series, because in the postseason, those might be the only chances you get to score runs.
That was my first slide in the 5 ways that they lose it. You go back and look through how teams do in runners in scoring position, and you tell me a team that can't do it, and I'll tell you who lost in the best of 5. I mean, it's just, we can analyze this to death, but it's baseball 101. If you can't get runners home when you have the chance, you're not going to win. It's just as simple as that. Judo says, I think you can disagree with me if you want on that, guys, but just going back to my days, back when it was a championship series were best of 5. Judo says, I think Chris Sale was amped up mentally and worn down physically today. Chris Sale hasn't been the same pitcher the second half of the year, guys. Justin Verlander's been there and done that, and it really helped him today. I just don't think the Red Sox pitching is all that good. I think the Yankees pitching is better. But even with Severino getting torched in the wild card game, I would not be surprised if Houston swept Boston in that series. Judah also says we'd be very happy if Jason Worth shut up all the critics. What do you think he can do in this series besides take pitches, Ricky?
To be honest, I think that's his value. I mean, if he could come up with a big home run like he did in 2012, I think you take it. But that's really what I'm looking for from Worth. You can change a game with a 10 to 12 pitch at bat. We saw it in the NLDS last year how you could change a game. I mean, if you get Lester or Hendricks, one of those guys that throw 12, 15 pitches, you're not going to see them if they want to come back on short rest in these games for more than maybe, 90 pitches? So you could take maybe a sixth of their game right out of the gate. I mean, that's really what Worth's going to do. And I think maybe just his clubhouse presence is important.
Drew, they really seem to want to win this for him. They've actually come out and made statements to that effect. What are you seeing from Worth over the next 5 days?
Yeah, I think just like Ricky said, he's going to see a lot of pitches. And the other place where he could make an impact is if a pitcher towards the end of the series, if a pitcher is coming back on short rest, they're already going to be tired just because they haven't had their normal routine. And so if he's able to go in and get a 10-pitch at bat, you think maybe they're only going 60, 70 pitches. So you see in a sixth or a seventh of their pitches in one at bat right there. And just with his postseason experience, obviously he won the World Series in 2008 with Philadelphia, and he's been with the Nationals through each of their 3 postseason appearances. I think he could go out and make an impact. And then just with what we saw from Hayward last year in the World Series, where during that rain delay, he gave the big speech. I think kind of like what Ricky said, Worth provides great clubhouse presence.
Just don't send him rounding third, please. Not again.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are upset at Worth because of that. And that was Bob Henley's deal, in Game 5 last year. I mean, the people who have kind of turned on Worth, especially on social media, stun me. I mean, he's an aging player. I understand that. But he provides a lot of value to this team. And Ricky pretty much had the point I wanted to make, which was, taking pitches is such a huge aspect of postseason baseball. All right, guys, in the chat, I want to know what your predictions are and tell me what you think, what you're looking forward to most during this best-of-5 series. Before we get to predictions and something special we want to do, we can tell you that we've done a whole bunch of things. If you haven't read them on the site, Drew did the 5 X factors to watch out for in the series. Ricky did the tail of the tape, which was a massive 15 slide slideshow on all the positions and contrasting how the Nats and the Cubs kind of match up against each other. I did 5 reasons why the Nats will win the championship or the divisional series. Getting ahead of myself here. And 5 reasons why they could lose the divisional series. So if you haven't been to the site this week, go to it. I mean, a lot of people have. It's just chock full of goodness as you get ready for tomorrow. Tomorrow, Ricky will have his storylines for Game 1. We'll have storylines and takeaways before and after each game. And I will have the where to watch guide because it's important. Because it took me 2 minutes today to figure out where the hell they had mapped, or last night, where the hell they had remapped TBS onto my cable package. Because it's not a sports channel, so it's not one of the other sports channels. And just in case you want to know, it was channel 1434.
Also, we did a couple of DoDcasts this week. We had Ryan Davis who's covering games 3 and 4 at Wrigley for FanRag as well as Sporting News to talk about the Cubs. And then we talked with Casey Stern, who is the studio host at TBS, and he really likes the Nationals' chances, thinks they're going to win the World Series if they get by the Cubs. So Casey was a lot of fun to talk to. You're going to get great insight, and he really loves Dusty Baker. So you'll want to hear some comments on Dusty for sure.
National embarrassment. Tell us about that.
I was not expecting that comment, but to me, I mean, Casey will tell it like it is. And that's why I think he does a great job in LB Network Radio and on doing it with Pedro and Gary Sheffield and Jimmy Rollins. But I think he's got a point. It's up to the players. I mean, Joe Maddon made all these mistakes in Game 7 last year. The Cubs still won the game. I mean, if a break goes right here, a break goes right there, and Dusty's in a good spot. He didn't really lose last year's NLDS. Dave Roberts just pulled more aggressive buttons and wanted to use his closer for 7-8 outs, and it worked. I mean, sometimes those things happen. So it is embarrassing that Dusty is going to go into the series without a contract. I know Rizzo says they're going to get it done, but it feels like they're waiting for somebody to pop up, and nobody's popping up. So get this man a year contract with a year option and give him a chance at the 2,000 wins, because he's definitely earned a chance, and he's confident for sure, and that's what you love about Dusty. Maybe the confidence that he has will rub off on the players.
Seth says, Nats in 4 and seeing Harper playing for Las Vegas. Chris says Nats in 5, hopefully to face Arizona. Really, Chris? I thought you were going for the Dodgers in that series. I can't believe you're going for that. You're going against the fight that you wouldn't go against the fight in Lacey's there. Judo says if Max starts Game 3, I'm going to say Nats win at most in 4. If he does not, he's going to coming out looking like he did against Arizona. I think the Nats will lose in 5. All right. So that's your predictions. I'm going to switch screens here for a sec. There. All right. So now I'm not looking at myself on a 5-second delay anymore. As we've kind of hinted at in the last couple of weeks, Ricky is leaving us whenever this season ends. And he's moving on to some other things that I think will be great for his future. This is his choice. It's not any one of our choices. But it hurts to lose. I can't tell you what, for me, how wonderful it's been the last 13 months to work with him. And so Drew and I got him something, which he's now allowed to open as a token of our appreciation and genuine friendship that we have for him. We got this for you just so that you'll always remember the time that you spent with us. So I'll shut up and let the screen go to Ricky.
Well, I want to say thanks to you guys. It's so much fun to be working at District on Deck. I've been a fan side since I was a high school senior, and now I've been a couple years removed from college. But whether it's been Nationals or Yankees, I've enjoyed talking about baseball. I don't think this will be the last you see me talk about baseball, and I'm hoping for a big October run. I think what the team that we've built here and you guys in the chat room and all the great interviews we've gotten to do, whether it's minor leaguers or people on TV or people that cover the team, never would have thought these opportunities would be possible. So I want to thank all of you that listen to the show. And we want you to be here for the postseason because we're going to have hot takes and I'm sure instant reactions. One of us might be really angry. One of us might not be really angry. But that's why you might want to tune in and hopefully everything will go well. So I'll try to open this box because it's I'm having trouble opening the box.
We were supposed to do this later, but they were supposed to also let me know when they ship this. So for those of you watching, I got a note from Ricky saying, "Did you send me something?" About an hour before they told me they were going to ship it. So we weren't going to make him sit here for 2 weeks or a week or whatever, wondering what we had done for him. It's not a can of steaks out of a Pringles container. So we figured that we didn't want to do this during an actual game situation, that we would either do it between rounds or beforehand. So Ricky will be with us the rest of the way through however long the Nats go, and he will be doing game one. Well, we'll all be on the post-game shows, except for Drew, the little poopy head, is going to be actually at the park for game two.
Yeah, boo. Why are we at the ballpark for that?
But could have bought us tickets, you know. I just sat on a train for 15 hours to get down there for that. But Ricky will be with us as long as the Nats are playing. But we figured now was the time to actually recognize what he's done over the last 3 years as a co-editor for this site. I will be back next year, as long as the heart keeps ticking. And we hope to have a new co-editor officially named soon. But I think you kind of know who we would like to go with. The person that keeps the world's cleanest dorm room.
Yeah, we're still wondering that. Despite being on College Game Day last week, he still keeps the dorm clean.
Yeah, I don't know how I do it. My room at home wasn't this clean.
I remember that from some conversations. You never would do the DoDcast from your bedroom. Yeah. But Drew has a clean roommate. You know, I'm just absolutely. Did you get it open yet?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay, so
I got the box first open.
I didn't pack it. So I don't know who did that, but
yeah, there's a lot of tape on this box.
Well, that's good. That's good. So we're trying to figure out how to get Ricky's mom involved in this, but
this is really nice, guys. This is really nice. My mom will really like this one.
Show it again, Rick. There you go.
Very nice. I appreciate this, guys. This is awesome.
Well, you've been awesome.
Are we making picks?
Before you get emotional?
I'll be emotional after the last DoDcast. Let's save the emotions for when that happens.
Judo asked, specifically Ricky, what has been your favorite thing about covering the Nats?
My favorite thing, I would say, when I joined the Nats site in 2015, I really liked the core of this team. Getting a chance to watch Max Scherzer and Steven Strasburg every day. My opinions changed on Bryce Harper from watching him every day and seeing how he interacts with fans. I love what this team, the connection they have with their fan base. I think it's really unique. And I think I love seeing the change from the boring as heck Matt Williams in 2015 to Dusty being so much fun. In the last 2 years, you feel like you're going to win every day. And that's what makes it so exciting. So there's been so many big games, so many big moments. But I have to say, it's really just the change in culture and the way that the team connects with the fan base is what I like the most.
Interesting enough, when I switched out and left the chat for a second, Judo said, I agree with whoever's analysis this was. He was talking about Matt Williams was a total train wreck. This team plays well under Dusty. They never air out any dirty laundry. Seth is asking you to follow him on Twitter. Put your Twitter handle on the bottom, Seth, so we can all follow you on Twitter. Because we'd be happy to do that. Judo said, if they make the World Series, we want you to come back. Of course we do. You haven't heard the last of Mr. Keeler on this program. Just be as a guest, and we'd be glad to go on his programs and talk about how bad St. John's basketball is, especially Mr. Douglas. See, you're not in the same conference anymore. So all right. So our predictions, and hello to Ultimate Dragon, and as Chris said, we will miss you a great deal, but I'm glad that you're staying around for the playoffs. All right, predictions. I was gonna say Nats in 4, but I think the Scherzer thing kind of changes all that. So I think it will be. I think the Nats win, but I think it'll be in 5 tougher games than people would like, and I'll move to Drew.
Yeah, I think just like you said, the Nats win the series in 5. Just with the way the Nationals played in the postseason in the past, I don't see how this series doesn't get to 5 games. And I think the Nationals do win because, as we saw last year, bullpens can really make a huge difference. And I think just with the law firm in the back end, and then just Alvarez's versatility, he can kind of fill an Andrew Miller type role. I think Nationals bullpen is a lot better suited for this series than the Cubs bullpen is.
Ricky.
All right, we're gonna go a lot of bold. We're gonna make some bold picks, and hopefully some of them stick. Number 1, the Cubs win Game 1. I think both pitchers will throw it well, but in the end, I'll take Hendricks' experience and ability to throw the Nats lineup off balance. So I think he will beat Strasburg, although Murphy hit 2 homers against him this year, so keep an eye on that. I think the bullpens are key, and I like Drew's point. I think speed is going to be key. I say Max Scherzer comes out of the bullpen in Game 5, gives you an inning of strong, dominant, pump your fist up kind of moment, and Adam Lind hits the pinch hit home run in the late innings. To beat the curse, you got to do crazy things sometimes. Ron knows firsthand with his team, the Cubs last year.
Right.
So I'm going to say the Nats rally in Game 5 and win the series in 5 games.
That'd be nice. I think it would be. I was on Sully's baseball podcast a couple weeks ago, and he asked me what I thought would be an acceptable result for the year, and I said just getting out of this round, I think would just kind of calm things down and get ready for next year. But if they were able to win it, come from behind Game 5 at home, I just think that the picture, regardless of what happens against the in the next round, it just sets up a great year coming up in 2018. All right, so thank you all so much for being with us for the last hour and 2 minutes. You can follow Rick at Rickinator555. It was nice of him to actually put that out there. Drew, how can people follow you?
At DrewRD98.
What does that mean? Was that the year you were born, wasn't it? 98.
Yes, correct.
That's the year I got married. Just putting that out there. I'm pretty simple. I'm at Ron Juckett. The website itself is at District on Deck. You can give us a like on Facebook at District on Deck, Twitter at District on Deck. Ricky will be with you Game 1. I will be with you Game 2. Drew will be with you Game 3. Hopefully we'll have sobered him up by then. I will be with you for Game 4, and if we go to 5, it'll be Mr. Keeler. And we'll be with you, all of us that are available will be with you on these shows, which is why we're not going to do trivia questions and all that. We'll have a lot to get through and a lot to break down in a very short time to try to get writing for deadlines. We've had one of the best weeks we've had in on-site history this week, and it's all because of what you guys do and what you guys do for us. So for Chris Lacey, who is in the chat, Brian Foley, and Sam, who you get to read on the site, Drew Douglas, and of course my dear friend Ricky Keeler, I'm Ron Juckett. You have yourselves a good night, and the 3 of us will talk to you tomorrow night about 11 o'clock. Just in time to watch the Dodgers and and the D-backs, hopefully after a good one. Have yourselves a good night, and go Tribe.